Good day, everyone. Scooter coming to you live from the Granville Guitars World Headquarters here in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida. Today is October the 20th, and I just finished a 73 Deluxe. It's turning into Deluxapalooza around here. I got a total of 4 in the shop this week. Finished up that 73. And I'll be doing a play demo for that one here before too long, probably later today, maybe, if I'm lucky. I'm getting started on this one here. It's a 65, and it's a survivor. This thing has apparently been in storage for 30 years. And as we're going to see here in a few moments, when I get it opened up, it is untouched inside. As a matter of fact, I looked very closely at the chassis screws before and nuts before I loosened it up to get the chassis out of this thing, and all of the star washers lined up perfectly. So this thing has, sorry, let me get this mic around here. This guy has never ever been opened before I did it. So, if you're interested in this kind of thing, hold on to your horses, because it's going to be really, really cool. You can see we got a problem there. There's a missing knob off the treble pot, and it has corroded solid. So I'm going to have to do something with that. Hopefully I'll be able to work it loose. At the very least, I should be able to repair it. In some way, hopefully not to replace it, but I will replace it if I have to. All the snowman knobs are present except for the one missing treble knob, obviously. Got a little pitting on the faceplate just from, long periods of storage. But yeah, in general, boy, she's looking clean. Grill cloth is nice. Let's flip it around back and see what we got going on back there, shall we? All right, here we are around back. Let's take a peek at the speaker. Speaker could be of the right age. Not sure. I think with that blue label, it's later. And the date code on it has been smeared, so it's kind of hard to identify. But I think it's possible that that's been changed. But let's look here around back at the back panel. I've already clipped the power cord off, as you can see there. It was an original 2-pronger, and I didn't want to power it up without that. So now, if you've watched, you can see there's a bit of surface rust there on the power transformer. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. I think we'll probably leave most of that in place. It's good, honest storage rust. It's not going to hurt anything. As we move across here, we're going to look at those date codes when I get the chassis out. But the back panel's in really good shape. That'll clean up nicely. Little pitting on the chassis. It's to be expected. Taking the tubes out already. All of the tubes. It came without a rectifier tube, so we're going to have to put a rec tube in it. I'll put a brand new JJ rectifier tube in right there, down at the end. The power tubes were good. A very closely matched pair of RCA black plates, and so we're going to leave those in place. It did have, let's see, let's go back over here. Okay, there's V1, 2, and 3 from the right to the left. V3 was actually frosted inside, so it had seen some vibrational trauma that caused the vacuum to fail. So we're replacing that. The other 5 tubes in here tested good. So we're going to start with those, and hopefully they will deliver good sound, and we'll be good with that. Now, when I was taking the upper back panel off here, these 2 screws on this side actually broke off. They were so rusted, and the ones on the other side I actually had to get out with a Robo Grips because they were rusted solid in there too. It's been stored so long that they just rusted solid into wood, and they did not want to come out. You can see there on that bottom plate we got some Tolex lifting we're going to have to deal with. Quite a bit of dust and dirt and crud. Just cleaning. A lot of this is going to be cleaning the Tolex, and as I've stated previously, I have a way I like to clean Tolex. Let's just talk about that. This is my Tolex brush right here. This guy. I bought this at Target years ago. Years and years ago. It's a vegetable brush. You can find it over in the kitchen supplies. Okay? It's meant to be used like this in the palm of your hand, and we're going to be using it in a circular fashion like that when we do amplifiers. All right? So what you do is you gut the cabinet. Got to take the speaker out, got to take the reverb tank out, anything that could be damaged by excess moisture. Got to take it out. This is what I use to clean Tolex with. That's the important part. Ammonia free. This Crystal Rain fresh scent just kind of smells pretty good. But it's important. They make several different types of this ammonia free. That's what you want to use. What I will do is I will go one side of a cabinet or a panel. I do them on the back panels too. At a time, and I will saturate it with this stuff. And then once it's saturated, I will go in a grid pattern in a circular motion. Let me show you. Say I'm doing this panel here. I will hose this down, take it off, obviously, and lay it down on a flat bench or something. And then I will go in a circular motion, pressing with the palm of my hand, like this, and working my way in a grid pattern all the way across. Boy, this Tolex is loose. We're going to have to spend some time with that. Working my way all the way across. Then while it's wet, I will hose it down again with a second run of that Windex and do the same thing again. Pushing down to get into those little cracks. These nylon bristles are great because they're pointy and they're slightly abrasive, but not enough to really hurt the Tolex, which is a petroleum product. It's pretty tough. You just want to get down into those little crevices and get the dust and dirt and crud out of there. So that's what I do. I do that on all Tolex surfaces. I'm going to do the reverb tank that way. Do not do the speaker that way. You never want to use anything on a speaker that's got any kind of moisture to it. Okay, let's take a look down into the cabinet here a little bit so you can see what we're up against. Yeah, it's quite dirty inside. You can see these cables have got dust and cobwebs and crap on here. Whoever owned the amplifier actually masking taped a couple of spare fuses to the cable here, and I'll probably leave that in position, honestly. That's, you know, it's not a bad idea, and it's been there a long time, so why not if it'll stay put. But we got a lot of dust. Unfortunately, the tube label is gone. I'm not sure why those leave so much. You know, people pull them off for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. But, you know, this one I kind of think went away due to storage. There are some pieces of it laying around on the bottom of this thing. So I kind of think it just fell off on its own. Saw some humidity and that was the end of it. But, all right. So that's everything for the back panel, including my little cleaning procedure. Oh, once you've gone across the Tolex, the second pass, you're going to wipe it off with paper towels, and that's it. That's it. Ammonia-free Windex, palm-style vegetable brush. And like I said, I've had this thing for, I don't know, probably 15 years, 16 years maybe. It still looks pretty good. It still works great. I use it on any Tolex cleaning that I have to do. So, yeah. Anyway, let's have a look inside this jewel. This is the exciting part for those of you who like this stuff. All right, kids, here we go. This is the good stuff. This is an amp that, as you can see, has never been touched. Never, ever, ever. This is what you like to see when you open up a mid-60s Fender amplifier of any sort. You got your molded Mallory's right here, bass, mid, treble, and then you've got your slope resistor. Normal channel slope resistor is right here. Normal channel preamp plate resistors are right here. Nice. You know, I've already dusted this off. This thing had a layer of dust inside of it. Right here next to this, that is the, let's see, the plate resistor is here. So that is the coupling capacitor for the normal channel. Now this is one of our good friends, and you like to see these in here. It means they're original equipment, but generally you have to remove them. This is your normal channel first preamp cathode resistor and capacitor, and also the vibrato channel first preamp cathode resistor and capacitor. You can't see them, but you can see the lead right here and right here on the other side. There are resistors tucked in amongst the fatty on the underside of that guy. So these are bypass caps, and they have resistors in parallel with them that are under there. And then we got the tone stack for the vibrato channel, or tremolo channel, reverb channel, effects channel, whatever you want to say. And there are some more coupling caps that are going to have to come out. Right there, this is the clock situation for the oscillator for the tremolo. It's the resistor and capacitor network that actually controls the clock for the tremolo. Here's the optical bug for the trem. Right here, that's another bypass cap. That one happens to be for the vibrato. All of this stuff in here is for the vibrato or tremolo. Long-tailed pair, phase inverter here. Phase inverter bias resistors right here. Phase inverter grid resistors here, and phase inverter cathode resistor in the center. And then after that, let's see here. This is your negative feedback coupling cap. These two caps are the phase inverter plate resistors, phase inverter plate resistors. Output coupling caps are right here. And then, of course, your bias splitter resistors are up in the top, up in that area. But this guy is clean. Look at these tightly wound filament wires right along here. I mean, it's nice to open one of these. You know, I don't mind the CBS amps. I think they're fine. But they were making so much of them, so many of them rather, that they kind of were throwing them together, and they didn't really pay attention to a lot of the finer detail work. And those filament wires are just nicely, tightly bundled up. It's really nice to see them in there like that. It's a reminder of an earlier time when craftsmanship mattered more than it seems to. Okay, that big cap up in there, which we can see if we rotate this tube around, is the 50 microfarad at 50 volt. That is for your bias supply. You'll note that the positive end is connected to ground. That's how we know it's for bias, because we're dealing with negative voltages there. And then there's a excuse me, a diode up in here, and a bias supply resistor up in there too. And those guys, sometimes I'll replace them, sometimes not. It just depends. This thing is kind of cruddy and roached inside, and is going to need a lot of cleaning done to it. So, I'm going to leave as much as I can, and then just see what it sounds like. And if it's not misbehaving, I'm going to leave a lot of this, or as much as I can. Here is the rear of that treble pot that's missing a knob, and it won't turn. It's completely frozen. So I'm going to have to do a little work to that. Hopefully I'll be able to work it loose And it's going to be especially tricky because you don't want to disturb the solder joint, so you kind of have to do the work while the pot is still soldered in. So you have to be, I don't know, it's tricky. You got to get lubricant down in there and carefully work it back and forth, and hopefully it works after you've loosened it up. If that's what you choose to do, is loosen it up. In a lot of cases, guys will just replace them, and I may have to. But I'm going to try to keep it original if I can. Originality is key in a lot of instances, and as long as it's a component that's not a safety issue. Safety first always in these matters, kids. Safety first. All right. If you have that, that's why we replace electrolytic capacitors, the ones on in the doghouse on the flip side. We're going to see those in a minute. That's why we're so adamant about replacing things like that, replacing things like three pin grounded power cords, things that allow you to safely enjoy these instruments, and they are instruments. But we do have a responsibility, I think, as custodians for the next generation of owners, to leave things in as natural a state as we found them, if that's possible. Now, things like these caps, a few of them have little bursts on them, little blisters, where they've leaked. And that's to be expected for an amp that's been in storage for 30 years. So a lot of that's going to have to go away. Some of this wire might be rotted out. We don't know. And I won't know until I power it up very slowly and very carefully. Let's have a look at the doghouse here. Okay, before we look at the doghouse, let's have a look at our transformer codes here. 6065, that's exactly what you want to see. 606542. So that would make it the 42nd week of 1965. That is your power transformer. This is the choke right there that's actually part of the filter supply. I don't know whether you can see it or not, but that code is actually 6065. Yeah, it's hard to read. It's got 3 digits after that. I can't read them very well. But that's your choke, and it's a 65. Here is the output transformer. Little storage skin on there, if you will, from just being stored. 6065-47, so that's even later in the week, or in the year rather. We know that's the 47th out of 52 weeks that year. So, and then the last transformer is down here. That's your reverb transformer, and that little guy says 606548. Okay, so this one's real late 65. Might even call it a 66. But the transformers are all 65. So now here to look at the filter caps, you can see we've got a little bit of schmang on here from being stored, and that answers to the other stuff on the inside of the doghouse box there. And they don't look too bad here on the negative ends, but if we flip it around, oops, there we go. If we flip it around and get a little better angle here, we can see the bad mojo. Now, this is a filter supply. This is blunt force trauma voltage we're talking about here. So I'm always going to err on the side of replacing these more often than not, just due to age. You can see the buildup of just age on them. I don't think this amp is suffering from any replacement issues due to usage. There's a burst right there on that right totem pole cap. We got it right there. That's a burst. Let's see if I can focus it well enough for you to see it. Yeah, it's right there where it's burst open. That's probably where a lot of this, you can see right here, this wire has got this powdery junk on it. That's electrolytic that's leaked out. So these guys are all going to have to go away. They're old enough. So yeah, it's time. And as I've said before, I am replacing these resistors. There's no need to keep those there. Carbon comp resistors, as they age, become unstable. They like to crumble into little bits given the chance. So those will be going away. That's kind of it for the pre-show here, as it were. Show off all of the stuff that's going to have to get done. Let me lift this chassis out of the way real quick here and give you a better view of the inside, so you can kind of see what we're up against for dust here. I mean, look at this. There's just it's a layer of dust and crud that we're going to have to very carefully clean off in such a way that it just looks clean, not new. I'll probably clean this speaker up some, even though I don't think it's original. I really don't. But, it's possible. And if it's, we're going to leave it in place. There's no plans to replace the speaker unless it's blown. I don't think it is. So, anyway, that's about it for the pre-show and the tour of the innards of this thing. So I'm going to hack into it and go with the first wave of replacements and cleaning. Stay tuned. Okay, we're coming down to the end of this thing here. I've completed my my cleaning, such as it is. Spiffed up the speaker a little bit. Redid the speaker cable. Cleaned up that wiring. First of all, it was hooked up incorrectly. The wires were reversed, and the black wire was not even soldered in properly in the least. So I've got that all fixed up. Just a little bit of minor cleaning on the speaker, just to kind of get the dust and crud off of it. And you can see that we've fixed up the loose Tolex on the sides, and also gotten rid of that layer of dust that was really causing some issues there. Tube label's still gone. Spent some time cleaning up the bottom. Now the reverb bag was in the bottom of there, and now it's not. Reattached that Tolex strip there. On this side too, a lot of the same work, just cleaning and reattaching Tolex, etc. All that kind of jazz. And you can see up here that I did clean the Tolex all around the amplifier. Removed all the hardware, and like I said, I didn't want to fool anybody into thinking that this was a new amp. You just want to clean it a little, get some of the age and dust off of it. But yeah, it was pretty cruddy and pretty dusty from storage. So fortunately, the baffle is in good shape because it's that press board stuff, and sometimes when amps are in storage for a long time, they can take on a bunch of moisture, and that press board doesn't survive that stuff well usually. So anyway, there's the back here. Let's look inside the chassis. Okay, when last we saw our good friends, the electrolytic filter supply caps, they were old and crusty, kind of like me. You'll see that we've replaced the dropping resistors, the 10Ks, original values, new metal oxide composition. Since this is kind of a more collectible amp than the 73 that I did earlier this week, I did no modifications to this power supply. Pretty much left it the way that it was, just kind of upped these values a little bit with modern values, 22 at 500. Just a little bit more for your filter supply. But yeah, we've got everything mounted in there cleanly. Cleaned up a lot of dust and grime and stuff that were in there. And I like to make my solder joints nice and clean. A good clean solder joint is a good solder joint. So yeah, there we go. F&T caps, German made. That's the law in my shop. I've pretty much used those exclusively now for a number of years. I went through various phases. I was using JJs for a while, which are fine. And used to use spray blue atoms all the time. But I just feel like I get the most consistent, reliable results in general from the F&Ts. So that's what we've done here. All right, let's flip this thing over and have a look inside. All right, we're up here at the front end of the amplifier. And you can see that I've left pretty much everything except for those electrolytics, the cathode resistor and capacitor bypass arrangements. Let's move this around just a little bit so you can see those. Those little guys right there. Here and here. Both of those have 1Ks bypassed with 25 microfarad at 25 volt. And everything else was left alone. Original wiring, original ground connections. Everything else up here was left alone. As we move through the amp, here's the next set of bypass cap resistors. This is normal and vibrato channel, second preamp cathode and resistor and capacitor. Also the reverb driver cathode resistor and capacitor. Up here, this 1 meg is the that's the reverb driver grid resistor. It's kind of, you can't really see it from that angle. It's tucked in way up there. See that guy right there? That little 1 meg right there is what we're talking about. And that's soldered to ground at that same point. Then we come over here to this last pair. This first one on the right is the reverb recovery cathode resistor and cap, and the one on the left is one of the vibrato cathode and resistor capacitors. And then here's your reverb recovery grid resistor up here, that 220K, way up top, that one right there. So yeah, used carbon comps here. Again, because that's what I've got in this value. And I really wanted this one to be a carbon comp too in this amplifier. A very tightly matched one, so that's why we went with that. And then finally over here, you can see this resistor, this 100K resistor. That is the one of the vibrato cathode resistor and capacitor networks. It's bypassed with a 25 at 50 volts because it's a little higher voltage circuit. So we up that just a bit. Now, you can also see a nice, clean, new alpha pot right there. Unfortunately, the treble pot was not salvageable. That sucker was welded. I mean, welded. And I've never seen one that seized up. Usually, at the very least, I can take them apart and rebuild them and retain the back of the pot. But that guy was not going to be fixed. Nothing I did for it helped. It was very depressing, honestly. I hate having to do that, but you want a functional amplifier. Good news is, and we'll see it here in a few minutes when I show you the front of the amp, I pulled a knob off my personal 65 Bassman that I rebuilt, from nothing. As a matter of fact, there's very little of the original Bassman left, but I did have one decent original Snowman knob with the set screw at 10. The way you would expect on this amp. So I was able to replace the missing knob with an appropriate knob, period correct, and the same amount of wear and tear as the other knob, so it looks righteous. And that's an appropriate thing. So haven't replaced anything down here yet because I want to hear the amp. I have not actually powered it up yet. So there is your bias supply potentiometer. And the bias supply down there with the new F&T 100 at 100 volt. Let's see if we can get some light up in there, please. So we can see what we're looking at. There we go. Wanted to do my initial voltage tests. That resistor and diode were doing just fine, so I left them alone. It's a low voltage circuit, and very low voltage in a Deluxe Reverb. So those are fine. I left them alone for now. If they cause me some issues, I may change that. Let's flip this around to the other side so you can see the rear of this chassis. Okay, right there you can see the new power cable, the new 3-conductor AC cable. And you can see my ground connection right there. Obviously, it did not have previously a ground connection there, so I just added it. I didn't have to remove an old one. Man, this camera just has a mind of its own for focus. I think those filament wires in front of it are the problem, but you can see the connection I'm talking about right here. I like to use these little eyelets that have 2 holes in them. Let's see if I can move this out of the way temporarily so you can see. Yeah, these little eyelets here. I like to use the ones that have 2 holes and solder the ground wire to the lower of the 2 holes. This gives me a nice little test point for ground. That's the true ground of the amplifier, the first ground that it sees with the juice coming out of the wall. So, yeah, and I cleaned the chassis underneath it, so we have a nice solid connection to ground. Now, if you look back here at the rear of the chassis, I used a rubber grommet and a wire tie rather than that traditional, cable grommet that chomps on the cord. The reason I did this is actually quite simple. I don't like to make a habit of drilling out holes on a vintage chassis if I can avoid it. Sometimes it can't be avoided, but this is how you do that, because the new cable is quite thick, and it's too thick for one of those cable chompers to work. So this is what you do. It's quite snug in there. It's going to stay put. There is your courtesy outlet, and as you can see, there are no wires running to it. I do not encourage the use of those things, particularly because that's a 2-conductor courtesy outlet, and you'd want that to be grounded if you did want to use it. Here is your polarity switch, which is not necessary anymore because we've got 3 grounded cable. Down here we see the black wire from the wall is going straight to the tip of the fuse. Bingo, period. Other side of this is the power transformer. Usually a black and white wire on this unit. In those earlier units, these were both black. It doesn't really matter which one goes where. And then the white wire, the neutral, goes over here to the power switch right there. And that's how you wire it up. That way, the fuse is going to protect everything in the amplifier, and that's important. So, all right, let's come down here. I did not do any work on any of the wiring down here where the filament is and all of that, or filaments rather, except for cleaning some of the dust away from those wires. But they're all in real good shape. Tested them all for continuity, using an ohm meter. And everything's looking real good. No stray capacitances that I could find in any of those wires. So, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Once I turn the amp on and start to charge the caps, we'll get a better feel what's going on. So that pretty much entails all of that work. Yeah, so at this point, I'm going to charge up the caps and put it on the variac, start bringing it up slowly so I can get a feel for what's going on with all the capacitors. Let's have a look at the front panel here real quick while we're on this side here. Just cleaned it up gently. The process involves starting with just a little bit of that same Windex that I use on the Tolex, and just to get the dust and the grunge off of it a little bit. Let's move this over here. And had to put a new bulb in the pilot light. I did turn it on with my current limiter, so I know that the power transformer does work. And the pilot light was burnt out, so I replaced the pilot light. We go across the chassis here. After I gently clean it with some Windex, I cleaned the front panel with the knobs off and all the pots and jacks removed with just a little bit of paste wax. Now, just so you can remember, that is the knob that I installed on the new pot. So as you can see, it looks like it belongs. You know, it's got a little ding on it, little squash right there, but it's okay. It looks like it belongs with the rest of the knobs on this amplifier. So that's good. I'm happy with that. I was pleased to discover that I had one that would work right. So anyway, yeah, there's the front panel. So, all right, let's get these caps charged up and see what this bad boy does. All right, we're back, and let's see. Today is Thursday, the 21st of October, and the old reverb tank, unfortunately, was non-functional, and the old reverb cables were just howling to beat the band. That happens with those reverb cables that have the exposed ground, like these that I've made for the amplifier. So I had to put a replacement tank. The one I like, and you can see I've already put a piece of weather stripping on top of it in prep to go into the bag. The one I like for these is the Jensen Mod tank. I think they just sound the best. I ordered a whole bunch of different tanks once and just kind of had a shootout. And this is the one I like the best. And so this is what I typically use in Fender amplifiers. And you can see here that I've made classic style cables for them. These are real simple to make once you've mastered the technique. Yeah, it's not difficult at all, but plan on screwing up a few before you get it right. One of the things is that you have to use as little solder as you can get away with. You don't need to use a bunch, and particularly when you're soldering the tip, you want to make sure that the cloth insulator for the wire goes up inside there to prevent it shorting out anywhere other than where you've got it soldered. So that's what we've got here. Reverb tank going in. Amp sounds real good. It's got a few little ghost noises that I'm going to have to track down. The tremolo works. It's a little bit finicky. I'm going to have to take some measurements and figure that out. As is typical for these old blackface amps, you kind of have to run the reverb control up hotter than later models, usually 4 or 5, and it's just wet as hell. On these old ones, I've found that a lot of times, due to component drift and whatnot, you'll end up turning it up to 9 or 10 before it gets really wet. But it sounds really good. I'm going to do a play demo so you can hear what it sounds like. But that's what we got going on here right now. New reverb tank, new reverb cables. And I still have, like I said, a few little ghost things to chase around in there. There is some DC leaking back to the volume pot and the tone controls, but I'm not anxious to change out any capacitors that are leaking. First of all, you don't hear that noise that the pot makes when it's stationary, because it's just some DC voltage leaking back. And it's not like you're standing there while you're playing, turning the volume knob. So it doesn't make any noise because it's just a little bit of DC leaking back to the pot. And those old, molded blue Mallory caps, those are extremely important to how this amp sounds. So those need to be left in place at all costs. And so I'm going to tolerate a little bit of noise on the pots and encourage the owner to put up with a little bit of noise on the pots just for the sake of better tone. But anyway, so moving along, I got a little bit more fine tuning to do, and then we'll wrap this up. All right, here we are, friends. All finished, all buttoned up. Caps are charged. Tubes selected. Idle current set. Everything cleaned as much as I'm going to clean it, so that it looks like a nice old Fender amplifier. It's really good sounding one. Speaker's a little bit on grainy side. But hey, it's an old speaker. What can you do? If someone was going to buy this thing and really hammer it and use it on a regular basis, probably want to put a different speaker in it. But thing's solid. All your operating voltages are where they should be. There's still a little bit of DC voltage leaking back onto the volume control of both channels. And I'm leaving that. It's not dirty pots. The pots have been cleaned within an inch of their lives, so that's not the problem on that front. It's caps leaking DC back to the volume control, and I'm just worried about changing the tone. And like I said earlier, nobody stands there twiddling the knobs while you're playing. Usually set things and then you play, and after you've got done fiddling with the knobs, you're not gonna notice any of that little graininess. And the idea is to leave these things as original as humanly possible. So I'm gonna do a play demo on this thing, and that's going to be a separate video here, so that if you want to just hear what it sounds like, then you can go directly to that video. So yeah, this kind of wraps it all up. It was a shit ton of work, honestly. But it's real rewarding, because I like, making these things righteous. And when they come out of storage after 30 years, I mean, it's a time capsule. And, if you're a student of these pieces of American genius and know-how, like I am, you want to pay close attention to how they were made. And this was, one of those rare opportunities to look inside one. They still happen. I mean, these things are still out there. They're still popping up. This one was in storage for 30 years until just very recently. And that's why it was so dusty and cruddy and neglected. But she's rocking now. I think we're calling this a 65 because all the dates point to 65, but it could technically be a 66 because all the dates are quite late in 65, week 47 and week 42. And, so more than likely by the time this thing left the factory, it was probably 66. But 65, 66, somewhere in there. That's all. That's all we got for today on this report of this 65 Deluxe Reverb amplifier. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to hear what it sounds like, look for the following clip after this one, and I'll do a little play demo. I'll try not to talk very much during that demo, because I think you've had enough of me talking. If you have any questions or want to know more about what we do here at Granville Guitars, seek us out on the web at granvilleguitars.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and the blog over at WordPress, A View from the Granville Bench. That's all I know for today. Be good to one another.